Good afternoon. I'm Captain Luke Green. I'm the program manager for PMO 555. We are the office which is executing the Navy's Shipyard Infrastructure Optimization Program. We call it SIOP for short. First, I want to thank you for joining us today on Industry Day. I'll highlight, and we'll talk about later in the brief, that there will be a second portion to this in August. We'll give you all the details on that later in the brief. I'd also like to thank my ops and PAO teams. They're off to my left. You can't see them. They're off camera, but there's a lot of work that goes into an event like this, getting it ready, and a lot of work that'll happen between now and August to be ready for that. So thank you to the team for getting this event set up. We have a lot of different participants on the call today, various different specialties, various different perspectives, various different interests. And so I want to just let you know, some of you may be very experienced with shipyards, may know it well, have seen the operations before, and some of you may have never set foot in a shipyard. That's okay. We're going to provide a baseline level of information and knowledge for you to understand the shipyards, this program, and how you may fit into it. I'm going to hit a lot of recurring themes throughout the brief today. If you hear me repeating something, it's because A, it's important, and B, we spend a lot of time on it. So just pay attention to that. You'll hear me, again, repeat some of the themes that we really focus on in the program. All right, let's jump into our agenda. So today we're going to talk through an introduction to the Navy. We'll talk about the nuclear fleet, and then we'll talk about the shipyards themselves, the 4 public shipyards, where they're located, and the types of work we do there. We'll talk about the program, a quick overview. We'll talk about how we break up the program and how we prioritize or divide up our work. In a perfect world, I'd love to load each of you up into an airplane, fly you out to Pearl Harbor, and take you out for an actual tour and site visit of the shipyard. Not really practical, so instead we're going to do a virtual site visit today. We'll show you the conditions today at Pearl Harbor Naval Shipyard. We'll talk about the plan we have to recapitalize that yard, and then we'll show you a time lapse of our future intended state for Pearl Harbor Naval Shipyard. We'll have an opportunity to hear from Admiral Dean VanderLey. He's the commander of NAVFAC, and then we'll talk about the next steps in getting us towards our August second half of Industry Day. But before we get into the program, I'd like to introduce my boss, the PEO for Industrial Infrastructure, Mr. Mark Edelson. We'll hear remarks from him now.
Hello, I'm Mark Edelson, the Department of the Navy's Program Executive Officer for Industrial Infrastructure. Thank you for joining us for this Industry Day. We're excited to share the work underway to improve the public sector portion of America's ship repair industry, our plans for continuing this historically high investment, and ask for your assistance to better deliver the requirements being made in this strategic sector, critical to our economic and national security. Today, the Navy is in the midst of a generational upgrade to the industrial capacity and capability used to maintain the Navy's nuclear warships. We need partners from the design and construction industry, material vendors, labor unions, academia, regulatory agencies, elected officials, and the public to understand and support this effort, which is transforming the Navy's ship maintenance facilities for the next century. The nation's 4 public shipyards in Pearl Harbor, Hawaii, Bremerton, Washington, Portsmouth, Virginia, and Kittery, Maine are critical to submarine and aircraft carrier readiness. These 4 shipyards are the foundation of our national defense, but they were built during the age of sail and steam. Today, we maintain nuclear vessels within shipyard facilities that average 85 years old and use dry docks that average 101 years old, with the newest being built in 1966. The Shipyard Infrastructure Optimization Program, or SIOP, is the Navy's holistic and comprehensive investment program that will modernize and recapitalize the nation's dry docks to maintain our nuclear-powered submarines and aircraft carriers, optimize workflow through changes in the physical layout of the shipyards, and increase productivity through technology and equipment upgrades. The Navy's fleet of attack submarines, ballistic missile submarines, and aircraft carriers are deployed throughout the world to preserve the peace, respond in crisis, and win decisively in war. Be it in the Red Sea or the South China Sea, under the polar ice, or patrolling the sea lanes of commerce, the Navy represents the nation's away team and underpins the country's commitment to a rules-based international order. When the ships and submarines come home, they rely on the 4 public shipyards for maintenance and retrofit. Over 37,000 Navy employees work at those shipyards, ensuring that the ships are ready to deploy again, perform their mission, and bring our sailors home safely. Those maintenance periods have become more difficult as the ships grow more complex and facilities get older. Our shipyards were constructed and laid out to build conventional ships during World Wars I and II, not to maintain the high-tech fleet of today and tomorrow. SIOP will recapitalize the shipyards for our current fleet, for the ships now under construction, like the Ford, Virginia, and Columbia classes, and the ships of the generation that follow. We need the infrastructure of our shipyards as capable as the ships they support, the mechanics that perform the work, and the sailors who serve on the ships. SIOP is the Navy's commitment to this upgrade. By recapitalizing century-old infrastructure, we are also improving the quality of service for the engineers, mechanics, and sailors who work at the 4 public shipyards, providing safer working conditions, better amenities, and a more walkable environment, while ensuring reliable, resilient, and secure energy and water supply for the shipyards and their mission. To accomplish this work, we must partner with local stakeholders to ensure community input throughout the planning process, regulatory agencies to minimize environmental impact, elected officials to provide stable, predictable funding, and the public to communicate the benefits to the nation. We'll use the National Environmental Policy Act process to formally receive feedback, but with a program of this size and complexity, input from all facets of the industrial base are needed. The Navy is seeking innovative and commercial, technical, labor, logistics, and contracting solutions to deliver the best possible scope, schedule, and cost performance. That is why we are broadly sharing our near-term plans and long-term vision today, and asking for your input and ideas during Phase 2 of this Industry Day. SIOP is building a resilient joint force and defense ecosystem, and we need your help to do so. Thank you for your attendance.
Thank you, Mr. Edelson. And now, following on to the themes that he discussed, we want to introduce you and give you a quick vision of the Navy that Mr. Edelson talked about, where we're operating forward, what the Navy is doing out at sea. And as you watch this video, you'll see the fleet, you'll see us out around the globe. But what I want you to think about is the readiness that has to be generated to have a fleet, to sustain a fleet, to keep it out at sea 24/7. Think about the shipyards. Think about where that work occurs. Think about the maintainers, the mechanics, all the work that goes in behind that. The CNO refers to it as the foundation, and it is truly foundational to having a fleet that's operating forward. So please enjoy this video, and then we'll come back. All right, so I hope you appreciated that look at the fleet. If your heart's not beating a little faster now, we probably need to get you a doctor's appointment right after this event is done. So the U.S. Navy, we have 296 ships, hulls, but the nuclear fleet in particular, the PEO talked about this, 11 aircraft carriers and 69 submarines. They, again, are out operating around the world every day. You see in the news today, the Red Sea conflict, you see that we are being engaged on a daily basis, and you see that your Navy is out winning. That's important. That's today. But we also have to keep an eye downrange. We need to understand the competition with China. We need to understand what China is doing with its fleet, growing its fleet in the Pacific. And we need to be ready for that with a ready and capable fleet built around these aircraft carriers and submarines. To do that, we have our 4 naval shipyards. They truly generate that readiness. They enable the fleet to get out there and be on station around the world. I want to highlight the 2 major systems commands. Naval Sea Systems Command, we call them NAVSEA. They operate the 4 public shipyards. And then Naval Facilities Engineering Systems Command. They do the construction, the planning, the facility sustainment. That's a major component of SIOP. And they are an important partner with us as we look to do major construction in these 4 shipyards to enable their mission. Let's take a look at those 4 public shipyards. You see here where they're geographically located. The 2 bigger shipyards work on carriers and submarines, Puget Sound, Washington, and Norfolk, Virginia. The 2 smaller shipyards work exclusively on submarines for the nuclear fleet, Pearl Harbor Naval Shipyard and Portsmouth Naval Shipyard. In a moment of levity, I'll just point out the irony that Norfolk Naval Shipyard is actually located in Portsmouth, Virginia, and Portsmouth Naval Shipyard is actually located in Kittery, Maine. So we do that sometimes. We give you naming conventions to make sure you're paying attention in the Navy. So hopefully there's no confusion on which shipyard we're referring to. Portsmouth in Maine, Norfolk in Norfolk. All right. These shipyards have evolved over time. PEO mentioned it, from sails to steam to atoms. And here's just a visual depiction at Norfolk, Dry Dock 2. You see on the lower left, early wooden deck operations inside that dry dock. And then as you progress from bottom left to upper right, you see just the progression of technologies, the ships that we're working on. But the theme was consistent. The original intent for these shipyards and dry docks was to build sailing ships. We evolved into steel and steam, and today we operate and maintain the nuclear ships in these shipyards. But to highlight this graphic of Norfolk Naval Shipyard, it's a shipyard that was established in 1767, before we were even a country. And if you walk the yard down there today, you do see some original facilities. So as the shipyards have transitioned, they've not necessarily focused on purpose building and laying out. So what we see here, the shipyard size, the scale, you see these shipyards the way they're laid out today. Now, I want to highlight a couple things. Across the 4 shipyards, there's a total of 18 dry docks, significant number. You see also there the number of piers, wharves, facilities, and just the overall size. But I worry that as we talk about that, or as you look at just a graphic here on the screen, you may lose the real scale of what we're talking about. Almost when you see a picture of the Grand Canyon, you don't truly appreciate how big it is till you stand next to it. On the top right, we're looking at Norfolk Naval Shipyard, and just above the text box in the middle of the screen, you can just make out an aircraft carrier in dock. That's an 1,100-foot carrier sitting in the dry dock, and it almost just disappears into the background. And the rest of the shipyard, as you wrap to the right around the basin, there's another 3 dry docks. There's a lot of industrial facilities and a lot of piers, wharves, and other operational spaces all in that one area. Similarly, as you go down to the bottom right, you're looking at Puget Sound. Again, there's a carrier right in the middle of that picture in dry dock. And then off to your right, you see the rest of the shipyard proper. On the lower left, we're looking at Pearl Harbor Naval Shipyard. You see in the foreground The dry docks, you can pick them out by identifying the blue and yellow portal cranes, which operate in and around the shipyards. And then in the background, you see the surface fleet and the rest of Pearl Harbor. On the top left, you see Portsmouth Naval Shipyard. One of the things I want to highlight here, it's an island, but as you look at it, just appreciate how congested that foreground is. That's the controlled industrial area. That's where the bulk of these industrial operations are happening, and it is crowded. We'll talk more about that and the implications of that throughout the brief. Let's talk for a second about SIOP, how the program originated. In 2017, the GAO came in and did an audit of the Navy. They looked at our shipyards, they looked at the facilities, and they looked at the results. They looked at the throughput of ships in their maintenance processes and how that contributes to fleet operational availability. And frankly, it wasn't a flattering report for the Navy. We received that report. We responded in 2018. We acknowledged and identified that our facilities were in bad shape. They were old. They were in poor condition. And importantly, those inadequate facilities were leading to a loss of throughput. You see the lost operational days there for carriers, 1,300, and over 12,000 for submarines. An enormous amount of lost days that we should be and are extremely concerned about. The Navy assessed internally how best to get after this, and that was the origins of the SIOP program. We stood up a program office within NAVSEA to specifically look at how to recapitalize the shipyards in a way that that recovered or brought back our maintenance operations into the timelines where they need to be. I'll highlight two things on the solution side of it. We're going to recapitalize, right? These facilities must be recapitalized. And in that process, it only makes sense for us to reconfigure. We will lay out the shipyards in a way that makes sense, that support the current operations, that provide us some agility and some flexibility for future operations. We divide this, so you see here, we're going to recapitalize, we're going to reconfigure, and we divide that work into three primary areas. First, we look at dry docks. Second, we look at the rest of the facilities away from the waterfront, the buildings, utilities. And finally, we look at capital equipment. So we'll continue on through the brief, but just want you to understand how we originated and how we divide up the work. This is an important slide. The theme here is SIOP is here to stay. It's a multi-decade investment. It's a program that has tremendous congressional support. And recognizing that there may even be some congressional staffers on the line here, I want to highlight how much we appreciate the support we've gotten from Congress. It's been phenomenal, and we continue to take that very seriously, that support, and recognize that we owe top-tier performance in the program and delivery of these capabilities. On the right-hand side, you see from recent testimony, the CNO, the Secretary of the Navy, and the CNO's N4. All very important comments and very consistent with where both, again, Congress and the Navy and DoD's mindsets are that this is a program that's here for the long haul. So let's look at how the program is doing today. We have $6 billion of construction under contract today. We put up here just some of the headlines from recent projects, recent headlines that you've seen, may have seen in the news. This is important for us. We recognize that a part of our mandate is to identify when we deliver those capabilities. We want our supporters to know that we are delivering on a daily basis. So every time we award a contract, every time we cut a ribbon, every time we deliver a piece of equipment, we will push this information out in a way that is appropriate and that lets folks know we are delivering these capabilities to the shipyards as mandated. All right, so we'll jump in now to the first part of the program, dry dock modernization. This is incredibly important as we look at shifting the fleet from Nimitz-class carriers to Ford-class carriers. And as our submarines grow, our submarine forces grow, as we transition from Los Angeles to Virginia-class submarines, the dimensions physically get bigger. The water and cooling requirements while in dock increase. And so it's driving some modernization of our dry docks. As well, we talked about earlier in the brief, these docks were old, average age about 100 years old. They need some maintenance and recapitalization. On the top right, you see Dry Dock 8 in Norfolk. It's a carrier dock. We have a series of projects ongoing there today, about $500 million worth of work focused on delivering the right cooling water, right levels of cooling water for Ford, but also some structural repairs around the dock and other repairs required to maintain certification. On the bottom right, you see ongoing construction at Pearl Harbor Naval Shipyard. This project was awarded last year. It's a $4.5 billion overall project, and it provides Virginia-class Block 5 capability at Pearl Harbor. It replaces a Dry Dock 3, which is functionally obsolete now, and it again provides tremendous capability for the shipyard. On the lower left, you see Portsmouth Naval Shipyard. I'll highlight two things there. On the far left, under a series of white structures, is Dry Dock 3. On the far right, in the background of the picture, you see again under some white structures, Dry Dock 1. It's an existing dry dock. The cranes that you see in the basin are right now doing construction inside that basin, which will essentially transition from 1 Dry Dock 1 to 3 dry docks. We'll call them Dry Docks 1 East, West, and North. It's important to understand the complexities of that project. We'll talk more about challenges of working in the shipyard. But as if this level and scale of construction, building a dry dock, wasn't hard enough, we are doing it right next to the maintenance of a nuclear submarine. That's occurring in the background of that picture underneath those white canopies today. And there's an intense amount of coordination that occurs between the construction and the ship maintenance every day on that site. Finally, we'll go to the top left quadrant. This is a rendering of the multi-mission dry dock that we are designing in Puget Sound. Again, a dry dock which is designed to support Ford-class carrier maintenance, would be purpose-built to bring not only the physical dimensions to meet seismic criteria, to have the right levels of water, cooling water, and power delivered right there to the aircraft carrier. So it is an immense project. It dwarfs the other 3 projects, and we'll talk about that here in this next slide just to give you some scale. We built this because, like I said, as most people who have not been in a shipyard, it's hard to picture just how big these projects are. And so you see at the top the multi-mission dry dock at Portsmouth, about 1.5 times the Empire State Building when we talk about the amount of concrete and steel that goes into that project itself. The project in Pearl Harbor, a little bit bigger, 2 times the Empire State Building. And then you see the multi-mission dry dock, again, being designed, not under construction, being designed at Puget Sound, almost 4.5 times the amount of concrete and steel inside the Empire State Building. So when I say these dry dock projects are massive, I truly mean that. And I hope this project helps you to understand that. As we move back from the waterfront, we move into the facilities optimization. So this is the second phase. So we're recapitalizing and optimizing the facilities. And we built the graphic here to talk you through that story. And as you go from left to right across these boxes, what you'll see, the couple themes that you'll see. On the far left, there's a red spaghetti ball of lines, which really is an indicator of truly the way the work flows inside the shipyards today. Again, these facilities were not purpose-built. They were not laid out with the optimal process flows in mind, and so that's a challenge we deal with. There's a very real time distance problem of how work moves from shop to shop, and it contributes to delays of throughput inside the shipyard. You see the color coding, which just indicates how we measure a facility's condition: good, fair, poor, or failing. And so red being poor condition. And then you see the fleet there. You see a smaller set of submarines in dock at the pier. And importantly, next to the tachometers, I'll talk about those in a second, you see submarines idle, waiting to be maintained. That's a very real part of the Navy today. We aren't maintaining the throughput that we need to, and we have submarines idle waiting to be maintained. That's one of the things this program looks to resolve. The tachometers on the right-hand side are some of the ways that we measure the program's success. You see in black the throughput and throughput reductions, and then below that, facility condition, configuration, capacity, and resiliency. As you move from left to right on these screens, you see the evolution that we look for over time. And by the time you get to the far right, we have very streamlined processes. We have facilities that are purpose-built, shops brought to the waterfront where that makes sense to reduce the amount of travel distance required. And then also larger shops, we call them back shops, which can be located away from the waterfront. Shops where the work doesn't have to be located near the waterfront, and we can preserve that valuable real estate. You see larger docks, you see larger piers, and that's very intentional here to support the larger future platforms. And finally, importantly, you see an elimination of that backlog of submarines waiting to be maintained. This is more than just a fancy graphic that somebody drew on a piece of paper. This is truly a modeled output, and we'll talk through that at Pearl Harbor, but we modeled 22 actual availabilities. We took all the data from it. We laid out the processes, we laid out the shops in the shipyards, and it helped us to understand how the yards should be configured shop by shop in order to deliver the best outcomes for the shipyards. And so that's foundational to the recapitalization that we'll do inside this program. And as we walk through the area development plans, we walk through those processes, I think you'll gain a much better appreciation and understanding of that. All right, let's talk now about the third leg of our program, and this is the industrial equipment recapitalization. We have a little over 1,100 pieces of equipment, capital equipment, and by definition, that's equipment that's $350,000 and above. Over 1,100 pieces across all 4 shipyards. It's old. Again, here's one of these consistent themes. A lot of our equipment, our facilities are aged. The challenge we have with the age of our equipment, in many cases, it's not supported by original equipment manufacturers. It is either not ideally suited for the tasks at hand, or it doesn't bring the full capability of what is available on the market. A couple things we're looking to do inside the program. One, as we invest across all 4 shipyards, we want to drive commonality of equipment where we can, both for purchasing power and for better maintenance practices and consistent maintenance practices across all 4 shipyards. We want to drive that commonality. We're considering options to implement enterprise-wide maintenance contracts on this equipment as we procure it. We are also looking downrange at how we maintain it for the life of the equipment, and then ideally recapitalize it again in the future. This is, you see the machines on the bottom right, you see the shaft laid above. This equipment, the equipment that's available today is incredibly powerful, incredibly capable. And part of that is just a two-way flow of information. We should be able to push designs directly to these machines, and the machines take the work from there. We should also be able to monitor the health and the usage of these machines, understand when they need preventive maintenance, understand when there's leading indicators of a potential failure, and be able to get out ahead of that, make sure the machines are available for use as they need to be. Part of that, that connectivity, it's not just as easy as plug in and understand, plug in and monitor. We do have some cybersecurity challenges we have to overcome. That's a very real challenge we're working through there. Also in the equipment recapitalization, we are implementing a material tracking system. This will be throughout the shipyard as either components come off the ships or as material is moved around the shipyard to support work. It allows us to keep physical track of where that material is at any given time. We understand exactly where it is and how we have it in the mechanic's hand when they're ready to do that work. And then finally, I mentioned the modeling that we did to support shipyard layouts. We are continuing to develop an industrial model that will take real-time feeds from these systems and be able to ultimately have a true digital twin of the shipyard. So along those lines, we've got here just a quick rendition of our digital roadmap. And as you go from left to right, it's increasing digital capability. I'll focus on the top half of the screen, both the graphic and then the text boxes there above the line, the ones that say SIOP. We do work very closely with NAVC and other entities who have other either business or IT or operational technology systems in the shipyard. We watch that closely. We stay aligned with them, and so that's why we have those laid out across the bottom. On the top half, though, from left to right, certainly all of our facilities have facility-related control systems tied in digitally, and an important component of any part of facility recapitalization. I talked about the modeling and simulation. The first increment of that was to look at specific shops in the shipyard and identify where in the shipyard those shops needed to be. I mentioned this earlier, but that was solving a time distance problem as a piece of equipment or a component from the ship moved from shop to shop. As we understand better the material tracking and the connected equipment, that helps us maintain that picture, that site picture of what's happening in the shipyard. In the second increment of modeling and simulation, we start to look inside the shops themselves. We have a better understanding of how that equipment is best laid out, how the work flows within a shop, and how we can streamline those operations to the best effect. And then finally, to have a fully digitized or fully digital twin operating with automated inputs, one of the things we've recognized that we'll have to improve is the communication backbone at our shipyards. That's a challenge today. We get very real feedback from the shipyards about the challenges they have with just connectivity, the ability to push data or pull data. We see that all the time. Even something as simple as today on a Teams call, they get a little choppy. And so a very real challenge that we're working on as part of this program. All right. So what's it like to work in these shipyards? I talked before about just, as we were looking at the four, I talked about the limited laydown area. Well, let's compound that challenge right ahead of that. You're literally working in an operational shipyard where the shipyard and its workforce are tasked to maintain the ships, get them out on time. We have to work around that. There's a lot of coordination that has to happen. And so that's challenge number one. And I mentioned this as we were looking earlier at Portsmouth, it is a day-to-day challenge. New things arise every day, whether it's on the construction side or on the ship maintenance side. We have robust integration teams in place, chartered and in place at all four shipyards that help us work through those challenges. I'll highlight the limited space for laydown. When you looked earlier in the brief at Portsmouth, you saw how congested that area was. The ongoing project there, I'll just highlight, one of the ideas we had as we, the Navy, were developing that project. We thought we'd be able to give the contractors an area on that island to use as their laydown area. As we got further into the project, as we started to interact with the construction contractors and really truly understand the scale of laydown area they needed, it was not going to happen on Portsmouth. And so what you see on the right-hand side there is real operations that are happening today. Our contractor has a prefab site set up in Brewer, Maine. The precast concrete monolithic sections you see there are cast up in Brewer, Maine, and these are about the size of a 4-story apartment building. They're enormous. You see it being loaded there onto a barge. It gets barged about 300 miles down to the shipyard, and then offloaded and will be set in place with the device you see on the bottom left of the screen. So that's just an indicator on this one project of the tremendous logistics challenges that have to be worked through, whether space or, again, laydown areas, et cetera. The infrastructure, it's old. We've talked about that. All the challenges that come with recapitalizing, or even if you're demolishing and building on a site, there's a lot of challenges associated with that. The things that you uncover or discover in that process can sometimes throw a loop into a construction project. As we've talked about, it is an industrial environment. So we see soil contaminants. We're near the waterfront, so there's flooding and natural disasters. A major part of our program is building the resiliency to sea level rise and other climate change concerns. And so, we recognize that. We recognize that we're at the waterfront, and that is even that much more of a challenge for us. Our power grids, electrical specifically, are challenged. We're essentially maxed out, and it's an old system that needs recapitalization. And so something we pay attention to often, daily. Seismic safety considerations. This is one that, frankly, we are learning more about every day. We are doing in-depth analysis at the shipyards to understand seismic concerns. We've focused first in Puget Sound, looking next at Hawaii and expanding the view from there. But truly a risk that we need to be aware of. We're discovering more about that every day, and we'll talk more about it in the brief as far as where you may be able to help us. And then finally, the historic and natural resources around the shipyards. I talked about Norfolk, the fact that it was originated in 1767. There are historical treasures around those shipyards. And, when you go to Pearl Harbor, very real reminders of World War II, that we want to preserve that history. It's important that we do preserve and honor it. Similarly, the natural resources around the shipyard, very important that we integrate with the community, we understand and value those natural resources and preserve them. So, moving on to environmental impacts, we do again recognize that we are operating in that environment. We use, the PEO talked about how we use the NEPA process to receive feedback, but we also look for robust partnering with the communities, with tribes around the areas, in particular in Puget Sound. The community in general, how are we impacting the environment potentially? If it's a specific project, what are the mitigations of that project's impacts, and how can we arrive at the best solution for everyone? The graphics on the right are great indicators of this, and there's a fish pond, a historic native fish pond in Pearl Harbor that we're recapitalizing, and again, that was very much done in coordination with the local community. And then an equally exciting story, Portsmouth was recently removed from the Superfund list. That's an enormous success, not only for the shipyard, but for the community around it. So we're very excited about the results we're getting there. Let's look at the community and the community impacts. So we recognize that the scale of this program, it's enormous, and you can't bring that level of work into an area without somehow impacting the community. We think there's opportunity for incredibly positive impacts. I mean, that's what we look to partner with you and capitalize on. You see at the bottom there, reference to DSIP, the Defense Community Infrastructure Pilot Program. It's an opportunity for us to collaborate with the local communities, and frankly, to tap into some fund sources that wouldn't otherwise be available to us. But when we can identify those community infrastructure projects that make sense, we absolutely are looking for ways to do that. So we welcome feedback from the local communities on things that we can do, projects that we can develop, and take advantage of those opportunities. The PEO talked about the shipyard workforce, the 37,000 people across the 4 shipyards. They are very real, the community. As well, we have the ships which come in to be maintained, their families, the sailors on those ships, all part of the community. And we look to be very well integrated with the community. On the bottom left, you see the PEO at a recent event in Norfolk, where he met with a local organization that looks at opportunities to partner with both the government and the federal government and the local government. So again, just the theme here is we understand and recognize that we will have some impacts. We want those to be positive, and we want to partner with the local communities to make sure they are. All right. Having talked it through all of that, I promised you that I was going to take you on a trip to Pearl Harbor. So again, I apologize that I couldn't load everyone onto a plane and do the true walkthrough, but let's jump into this video. As you watch it, just pay attention, look at the site conditions, look at the aged facilities, look at the general conditions, and think about how you could contribute to us recapitalizing those. So without further ado, we'll jump into Pearl Harbor.
The Pearl Harbor Naval Shipyard and Intermediate Maintenance Facility sits on 148 acres. It is one of only 4 shipyards currently operated by the Navy. The shipyard occupies a key strategic position in the Indo-Pacific and is the largest industrial employer in the state. The first dry dock opened in August of 1919. World War II came to the United States on December 7, 1941, with the infamous surprise attack. Admiral Chester Nimitz, commander of the Pacific Fleet, recognized the critical importance of the dry docks and the supporting infrastructure. Today, nearly 6,000 workers provide depot-level maintenance to the Pacific Fleet at Pearl Harbor Naval Shipyard. Seen here is the 105-year-old Dry Dock 1 and the surrounding maintenance facilities. Dry docks are the centerpiece of maintenance capability, and Pearl Harbor has 4. 3 of the dry docks support submarine maintenance, and Dry Dock 4 supports surface ship maintenance. The facilities around the dry docks are not optimally designed to support current maintenance operations. Lacking purpose-built facilities, shipyard operators work from temporary facilities erected around the dry docks. Maintenance operations require temporary construction of scaffolding and other access structures. When a submarine is dry docked, the surrounding area becomes cluttered and inefficient. Compounding the inefficiency, some of those facilities must be removed and then rebuilt in the event of a storm. Competing with the clutter, clear paths are necessary to allow for crane movement and emergency vehicle access. While you can't see them here, these massive structures are not built to current seismic codes, making them susceptible to damage during a seismic event. Ford Island, which also boasts a rich history, is seen here in the background. The shipyard skyline and the view from Ford Island are important considerations as we plan for recapitalization. The tri-peak roofs and famous No Ka'oi sign are aspects we want to preserve, so the shipyard continues embodying the values of honor, courage, commitment, and aloha. Continuing along our virtual tour, we come face to face with the yard's facilities and clearly see the deteriorated condition. Building envelopes are compromised. In some cases, they are structurally unsound or otherwise unfit for use. Facilities have been repurposed over time without properly accounting for the processes which will occur inside. Equipment spills out into the surrounding area. Again, we see the need for space being solved with temporary facilities. Maintenance operations rely on logistics support facilities. The flow of material to the waterfront must stay on schedule, whether it is stored in warehouses or open laydown areas. In addition to materials storage, the yard maintains numerous and varied cranes on site. Many traverse the shipyard on a rail system. We return now to the maintenance shops. Whether in the intermediate maintenance facility or in the controlled industrial area that supports nuclear maintenance, the theme continues. These facilities are in desperate need of recapitalization. Some facilities are being used in ways which were never envisioned, creating inefficiencies in work processes. Recapitalizing this infrastructure provides opportunities not only to optimize the flow of work to turn ships out faster, it can also dramatically improve the worker experience. All of the Navy's shipyards contain historically significant facilities. Building 1, seen here, was where a Navy combat intelligence unit cracked the Japanese code in 1942. The shipyard recapitalization plan includes preservation of this type of history. Finally, we shift to the site of Dry Dock 5 construction. This project was awarded in 2023 to replace the functionally obsolete Dry Dock 3. This project delivers the capability to dock the large Virginia-class submarines, meets all current codes, and will ultimately employ more than 700 workers. The ceremony you see here was held in February to commemorate driving of the first production pile. Thank you for joining us on this virtual tour.
Okay, well, not the same as an actual site visit. I hope you appreciated that. And for those who have not been on the Pearl Harbor Naval Shipyard, I hope it gave you some insights as to what the conditions and the layout, what it actually looks like as you walk around. For each of the 4 shipyards, we have area development plans. Pearl Harbor's is complete. The other 3 shipyards, those are in progress right now. So Pearl Harbor, and that's part of the reason why we did the Pearl Harbor specific site visit. But at Pearl Harbor, with our area development plan, we have about 80 projects that we want to complete over time. I mentioned before that we have to work around the shipyard maintenance operations, and so those 80 projects would have to be sequenced in, will have to be sequenced in with that work in a way that allows their work to continue. We break those projects up into what we call capability packages, and these are focused on where that work occurs and what capability it delivers. You see on the left-hand side there, the capability packages 1, 2, and 3 are all focused on work around the dry docks. Our modeling and simulation analysis told us that the dry docks themselves must be there to support the platforms, and then the modeling and simulation of the work told us which work should come closest to the waterfront, which should be in waterfront production facilities near there. And that's really what delivers the most return on investment when we talk about reducing the maintenance availability durations. As we've wrapped those first 3 capability packages up, we start to step away further from the waterfront. Heavy machinery shops, we call these back shops. This is the work that can come off the submarine and really stays off for the majority of the maintenance duration, or may even go back to a different submarine or carrier, right? It's equipment that doesn't necessarily have to be worked close to the waterfront. And finally, the nuclear shops, again, further back from the waterfront. Sprinkled throughout those, we have themes. The PEO mentioned quality of service, right? Things that are making the employee experience better every day. Facilities like parking garages. Across all 4 shipyards, parking is a challenge. We see it every day today, and that's one of the areas that this program will address in improving the quality of service and the experience for both the shipyard mechanics and the sailors who work there. I'll highlight, you see it on the bottom left and on the top right of the graphic, but we are very output focused, results focused, and the biggest being the reduction in maintenance availabilities. We have modeled that with the work we intend to do at Pearl Harbor, we will receive or realize 85 days reduction per submarine availability. That's incredibly important. Just think about that. If you're the fleet commander and you have up almost 3 months of extra operational time from that submarine, we turn it around that much faster. Incredibly important, and really one of the top metrics that we focus on is how the investments impact the maintenance availabilities. We also track it though in man days. That helps us to understand the dollars associated with that reduction. We track facility resiliency and facility capacity. So all critical parts of our area development plans. And then the last thing I'll highlight, I mentioned before, multi-decade investments. Our modeling and our layout indicates that just based on the nature of the work and again, working around the shipyard production schedules, we anticipate working through about 2054 at Pearl Harbor. The projects specifically of those 80, we break them down and we could, we could divide this up many different ways, but of the 80 projects, 42 of them will modernize existing facilities. This is something we spend a lot of time looking at. Making decisions on, hey, do we recapitalize a facility, an existing facility, or do we just demolish and start with new construction? In many cases, it makes sense, or it requires just specific analysis of what we'll do in that building and if it will meet the intended purpose. New construction, you see that, transportation, parking, I'd mentioned the parking garages, and then workforce support and security. I've mentioned infrastructure throughout, our utilities, our water, our sewage, all of which is aged. We experience a lot of outages, unplanned outages, and certainly with the sewage and water, it presents potential environmental compliance issues for us. The wet berths you see. Every time we talk about a dry dock, the ship doesn't just go right into the dry dock. At the beginning and end of that dry docking period, the ship or submarine will spend time at a wet berth. We call it pre-game, end game, but those are important. We have to have the right number of wet berths, whether at wharves or piers, in order to support the commensurate number of dry docks we have at the facilities. I talked about waterfront production facilities. That's the new facilities that we will build closest to the dry docks and really where we get the most return on investment. The ship's maintenance facilities, again, further back from the waterfront, but a critical part of the maintenance, and then new dry docks. This is Pearl Harbor specifically, just the one new dry dock that we're building, but there will be ongoing recapitalizations or work around the other dry docks. So with that in mind, let's understand a little bit better just what that end state will be at Pearl Harbor. We've built this time lapse. Again, this is built from our ADP, from the modeling that we've done. This is our plan for Pearl Harbor. I hope you enjoy it.
Entering the harbor from the south, you can see the existing shipyard and facilities, circling past dry dock number 4 over Ford Island and centering on dry dock 1, 2, and 3. Here we see the projects and sequences from the Pearl Harbor Naval Shipyard Area Development Plan. The ADP is the master plan by which SIOP will be realized. Here you begin to see the projects from the Pearl Harbor Area Development Plan. These projects appear in the purposeful order charted in the ADP. The yellow buildings and projects represent renovation of historic and aging infrastructure. Red markings display obsolete facilities to be demolished. This includes filling in the former dry dock number 3. Blue highlights target new construction and infrastructure that will enable dry dock number 5 to accommodate new Virginia-class submarines. You will also see the waterfront production facility. As these projects move forward, several other projects are occurring across the shipyard, such as shop renovations and construction of supporting facilities. You'll notice some vessels begin to arrive. All of these projects and improvements are integrated with ongoing shipyard operations. Take note of the parking garage toward the top of the screen. To improve shipyard workforce quality of service, SIOP will build 2 new parking structures. New projects begin here, moving toward the goal of a single availability waterfront production facility and upgraded repair pier at Dry Dock 1. The floating dry dock intended for surface ship maintenance arrives to allow dry dock number 4 repair work for submarines to begin. The ultimate location for this floating dry dock is being evaluated under a special study. At the top right of the screen, preparations continue for the new single availability waterfront production facility at Dry Dock 4. You can see the heavy industrial shops, including ship maintenance facilities at center screen. Here preparations begin for additional heavy industrial modernization. The completion of all new ship maintenance facilities and waterfront production facilities will be a key component to achieving performance, efficiency, and quality of work goals at the shipyard. Toward the top of the screen is a new logistics complex. In the center, repair and maintenance on workforce support buildings will enhance quality of service. Throughout the final stages, you will notice shop modernization, and modernization of surface ship maintenance will follow, completing the area development plan. As the projects fade away, the view of the shipyard and waterfront show a completed vision for the future of Pearl Harbor Naval Shipyard. The flyover begins at the northeast corner of the shipyard, passing over the floating dry dock. The camera then passes over the new waterfront, featuring dry docks 1, 2, and 5, and supporting maintenance piers. The camera circles around the dry dock 5 complex. The large modernized ship maintenance facility featuring solar panels is visible in the center of the screen. Fully realized, SIOP will complete its area development plan and deliver new light industrial waterfront, heavy industrial back shops, workforce support, materials support, and logistics capabilities, all aimed to get submarines back to the fleet faster.
All right, exciting video as you think about just the potential recapitalization of Pearl Harbor Naval Shipyard. Not only just the work that can be done, the improvements to the facilities, but then as the video wrapped up, it talked about the returning these ships to the fleet faster. Very exciting for us in the program and for the Navy at large. I want to highlight a couple things here. You see on the left-hand side of this screen, the 6 primary disciplines, the way we'll talk about these projects. This is the way we're bucketing the work for Industry Day Part 2. Certainly there's a couple other ways we could have done it, but we think this really captures the vast majority of the work. Think about it as we talk through the next slides. I want you to just contemplate where you fit in, which bucket you fit into. It's absolutely not all inclusive. If you have the better mousetrap that doesn't fit into one of these disciplines necessarily, that's okay. We certainly welcome your inputs, your thoughts, your ideas. But again, we've got it laid out this way for Industry Day. Also contemplate that as you prepare your responses for us, the inputs that will come back to participate in the second half of Industry Day, these are, you may submit on one or you may check multiple boxes, right? If your feedback crosses more than one discipline, that's great, that's fine. We welcome that. So let's jump right into them. The first being waterfront and equipment. Tons of opportunities for us to do business better. This may come as a surprise to you if you come out and watch us dry dock a ship. One of the technologies that we use, our ships end up on wooden blocks, believe it or not. It's time tested, it's proven technology, it works. But in today's Navy, today's era, we are looking to see if there are better systems. Linked to that are the ship stability systems. As we bring these ships and submarines in particular with a round hull into dry dock, and we contemplate seismic risks and seismic concerns. If that ground and that dry dock starts shaking, we want to understand the risk of it coming off the blocks, or we want to introduce a system, a stability system, a cradle, if you will, that will ensure that the ship stays upright and in the orientation that we want it to. Ship lifts themselves. That's a technology in lieu of dry docks that are being used throughout the world. primarily for conventionally powered ships. And so as we look at that and consider the nuclear fleet, we are assessing today if that's a viable method for us to get the ship out of the water, to be able to access it and do a maintenance. If that is going to be more efficient, if that affords us better opportunities. Portal cranes, you see those on the top right. So we have those at all four of the shipyards. We have many of those. The couple challenges with the portal cranes, number one, they're big diesel-powered pieces of equipment. So we're interested in electrifying these potentially, not only to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, but to reduce the maintenance requirements. An electric motor, electrically operated crane, we believe may offer much lower maintenance requirements overall and much higher reliability than the diesel-powered cranes that we're using today. So we're definitely interested in that. A couple of the challenges there, as we've procured those portal cranes in particular, we've encountered some industrial-based limitations, some challenges. And so we look for your input to help us overcome that. And we use portal cranes, but that may not be the best solution. If there's other types of cranes that bring the right capacity, the right reach, the right lift as a better solution, we're very interested in that. Equipment connectivity, I talked about this before, but the machines, the equipment that we're buying today, it comes with tremendous capability. We want to leverage that full capability, and we are looking for ways to overcome the cybersecurity challenges that are preventing us from doing just that today. Let's move to foundations and structural. I talked earlier just about the scale of these projects, right? They're big, they're difficult engineering challenges. Seismic improvements is one of the ones that jumps right into my mind. You see a picture on the bottom left. This is work that happened last year. We did some analysis in Puget Sound. If you don't know, Puget Sound is located right above a fault line, so that exaggerates the concerns there. But we came in, we recognized the need to do some limited repairs in dry docks 4 and 5 at Puget Sound, and that's exactly what you see a photo of here, where we were able to get a company under contract, came in and did pinning of the wall sections in the middle of the docks, just to ensure that in a seismic event, in an earthquake, those walls would stay upright the way we need and want them to. On the top right, we talked about the precast yards up in Brewer, Maine, but you see it there. Again, just want you to appreciate, if you're a foundation or a structural engineer, the scale of what we're working on. I'll highlight also, you heard in the video and you saw the area development plan video discussion of filling in dry dock 3 at Pearl Harbor and building a waterfront production facility over top of it. That's a very real challenge that we're looking at today. We are assessing it, trying to understand the best way to do that. It's a massive volume of fill, and then we need a solid structure above it. Again, that dock is functionally obsolete. And so we welcome feedback on how you fill a massive void like that and then build a multi-story, large industrial facility above it, which houses large, heavy pieces of equipment. The foundations just under those pieces of equipment can be massive. So all part of things that we're working on. Again, not all inclusive, but just want to give you some introductions and some flavors to the challenges that we're facing today. Let's take a look at building envelopes and finishes. 4 different shipyards in 4 different areas of the country. Certainly the envelopes, the building envelopes have different demands, different requirements. As we look at the program and what we're delivering, we look for commonality where we can. We think that's important both for shops, for layouts, but also for overall procurement strategies. If I build a waterfront production facility to support Virginia-class submarines in Pearl Harbor, functionally, it should be the same as in Portsmouth. There may be some limitations on the building envelope or even the building itself just because of the geographic constraints, but all parts of things we're working on. I'll highlight one of the notes on there, tension fabrics. So just as an example, that's a technology that if you've been associated with the military for the last 20 plus years, we've used it extensively in expeditionary environments. very well familiar with it, but we've always treated it as a temporary facility, as one that's not meant to last a long time, and you wouldn't typically use it in these permanent for these permanent solutions. We're interested in that or other similar technologies which can deliver faster, less expensive, and offer us quicker solutions that can be coordinated with the shipyard operations much better. Now, I say that again, it's a harsh environment. There's the industrial operations. There can be heat. There can be large objects moving around, and just a lot of opportunity for wear and tear on a structure. As well, it's at the waterfront, so the saltwater corrosion, all concerns that we have to contend with. But we're looking for new ways to do business, and we welcome any of the inputs that you have that you think could contribute and help us solve problems with building envelopes and finishes. Moving inside the facilities, HVAC, just the systems inside, controls, and I talked about cybersecurity. As we look at the overall total ownership costs of these facilities, of the yards in general, we're looking for ways to improve that, reduce our total ownership costs. You see a couple opportunities there on the slide, geothermal, passive cooling, things like that we don't fully take advantage of in today's facilities. Lighting is, of course, a concern, worker experience and worker safety. Very real concern for us, how we introduce natural light, how we make sure that the shipyard workforce is operating in a safe, well-lit environment. One of the challenges there, I'll just highlight the cybersecurity policy again. The facility-related controls, we want to be able to control these remotely. We want to be able to monitor remotely. There's certainly a cybersecurity aspect of that. And then I mentioned throughout safety, the fire protection systems, et cetera, all incredibly important for the safety of this workforce and the operations that go on here. And I talked about just, the energy, the utility systems. You saw throughout the condition of our facilities, the utility systems are no different. I mentioned before the unplanned outages that we have at the shipyards. And consistent with, there are energy mandates that we're working on. The federal government, the Navy's chief sustainability officer recently issued some mandates that we are working, weaving into these area development plans to ensure that we're meeting the mandates, but also delivering a much more resilient and capable shipyard. We're looking at microgrid technologies. We're very interested in what you have to offer on that. When we recapitalize these utility systems, we start getting into the ground. I talked before about the age of the shipyards, how we get, as soon as you break ground on one of these projects, utilities in particular, there's always a process of discovery. So if there's better ways to, come in and recapitalize those types of systems, the utility systems, we are very interested in hearing about that. And then environmental. All of this work, like we talked about before, is in environmentally sensitive areas. Just a couple of things, massive amounts of dredging that we're doing. That's dredging of soil that's been in and around these industrial environments. Sometimes it has to be treated. Sometimes it can be disposed of immediately, but all that testing has to happen. We need ways to streamline those processes, to make those processes quicker and make them more cost effective. Let's look at design, acquisition. One of the things that we're doing differently as a program, we are looking much further down range than we typically do in the Navy or in the DoD when it comes to facility projects. Facility projects are typically designed, programmed, planned for as a one-off project by project basis. By treating it as a program, we can look at it differently. We can approach differently, whether it's our contracting strategies. I talked before about the capability packages. We're interested in bundling those projects in ways that get us economy of scale, that I can have like projects awarded together. It gives much better predictability of the work coming down the pipeline. It gives us better pricing. It gives the contractor base much better confidence in the work that's forthcoming from the Navy. There's a flip side to that, right? As we look to bundle projects, we have to balance it. We don't want it to be too big. One of the very real conversations we're having with the multi-mission dry dock that we showed you at Puget Sound, it's enormous, right? And we've had constructability reviews and expressed contractors expressed concern that this thing has to be broken up into ways that are bite-sized and manageable. Our look at it right now says it's about a 7-year construction window, and that's a long time for us to ask a contractor to bid on prices and really forecast what's happening. So that's also consistent with our contracting strategies, right? We're looking for ways to allocate risk between the government and the contractors. We welcome feedback on that. If you participated in a large project, if you've done work at this scale before and had to make those types of decisions, or innovative contracting solutions, we're definitely interested in hearing about that. Small business, we are very interested in pulling small business into this program. We recognize that some of these projects will be more appropriate than others, but even on the massive projects, we look for ways to subcontract to small business and make sure that we are building and developing those small businesses to be our future big businesses. I talked a little bit about the acquisition strategy. Again, all focused on delivering turnkey facilities. When we turn this over to the shipyards, I want that to be a complete facility, completely outfitted, ready to go. The mechanics walk right in, they get on the machines, and they turn to on the maintenance. That's not always the case in government contracting. Sometimes we partition the facility construction from the outfitting. In this case, treating it programmatically, again, will deliver the turnkey facility. So very, very interested in hearing your ideas on how we can contract or bundle better as we look towards awarding these contracts. Let me transition here. A lot on those six areas, all oriented towards our second industry day. So just pause for a second. Think about how you fit into one or more of those buckets of work, what you do every day, how the innovation you have in your organizations, how that could be brought to bear on this SIOP challenge. As you think about that, we'll talk in a second about how you respond for the second part of Industry Day. But first, let's hear from Admiral VanderLey. He's the Chief of Civil Engineers and the Commander of NAVFAC.
Well, hello everyone, and thank you so much for being part of our SIOP Industry Day today. I'm Rear Admiral Dean VanderLey, Commander of Naval Facilities Engineering Systems Command, or NAVFAC, and the 46th Chief of Civil Engineers. As the supporting command for SIOP, NAVFAC executes planning, contracting, design, and construction. So I have a particular interest in hearing the best industry and academia can bring us to improve outcomes. Facilities and infrastructure are often neglected and are not always thought of as areas of innovation, but we need to change how we think about that. As we shift gears to view infrastructure not only as brick and mortar, but really as a critical driver of lethality, as functionally a weapon system, we deliver capabilities to protect and enable our nation's strategic interests and economic prosperity. We'll only accomplish this through fostering and embracing change. One especially important part of this effort is supporting the Shipyard Infrastructure Optimization Program, or SIOP. SIOP is a much needed investment in repairs, modernization, and recapitalization to deliver dry docks at our 4 public shipyards that can support current and future classes of our nuclear-powered submarines and aircraft carriers. Optimize workflow through changes in the physical layout of the shipyard, and increase productivity through technology and equipment upgrades. To be sure, the improvements necessarily mean the scale of SIOP is expansive. There remains much work to be done. This is important work, and the many projects included in the scope of SIOP means the Navy would benefit from all facets of the industrial base getting involved. This is not exclusively the arena of the large construction firms. It's truly an all hands on deck effort. We need many companies in academia to bring us innovative solutions to get SIOP's investments executed. And we all must recognize that status quo is not sufficient. It's probably uncomfortable, but it's also really exciting. Operating at the edge of comfort, changing how we conceive of facilities, accelerating and streamlining the delivery of innovation needs to provide warfighting advantage we need. At scale, this is exciting and it is vital. We need help from all corners of industry, from academia, from all those with groundbreaking solutions. SIOP, NAVFAC, the Navy, the DoD, the nation. We cannot be afraid to radically depart from our standard operating procedures. These projects are too important, too large, for us to continue to conduct business as usual. We have to think different and build better. Thank you for your interest in and your participation in today's Virtual Industry Day. I hope you found today's presentations insightful and found that it clearly stated the need for industry input. Today was just our first step. We're excited to see what you submit for participation in the August dates. We're really happy to have you on the team and we look forward to the future.
All right, thank you, Admiral VanderLey. And let's talk about, we'll jump back to the teaser that I put out earlier in the brief, the SIOP Prize Challenge. So specifically, artificial intelligence in design. We are looking for ways to rapidly accelerate our design efforts. We see AI as a potential for that. So the National Security Innovation Network is a channel through which we can offer prize money for A&E firms who have developed AI as a way to influence design and use through design. And so I would say if you have any experience or any products which support AI in design specifically, please take a look at the QR code and submit on this. You see the timelines there, due June 19th. So please don't waste any time. Get your submissions in. Take a look at the website. Understand exactly what you have to submit. Any questions? We're happy to answer that. But I believe on the ideascalegov.com site there, or using the QR code, you can get all the information you need. Again, potential to win up to $250,000 for that prize. And solicitations close on the 19th of June. So that's one aspect of feedback we're interested in. The second, we'll transition to the Industry Day Part 2. If you've seen, you watched this presentation, you saw the way we're looking at Pearl Harbor specifically, but you saw the way we're breaking down the work of the program, and you see where we need help. Certainly, we need a lot of partnership from industry, people with good ideas, people with innovative approaches to solving these problems. We'll hold the second part of Industry Day in August, the 13th through the 15th. It'll be right here in DC. But importantly, we need your submissions before that. So by July 2nd, we look to receive your submissions on whatever it is that you bring to the table. We will evaluate those. We will reply to you by July 20th, letting you know that, or inviting you to come participate in this Industry Day Part 2. Where we'll receive your brief. We'll have an opportunity to ask questions, to interact on a personal face-to-face basis, and really deep dive into what it is you provide and understand that better. So you see the QR code here. You see the website listed there. I believe both of those, or rather the email address there, where if you had specific questions, you can reach out to our team. I believe between the two of those, you should be able to pull all the information you need, or certainly reach out to us, ask us questions, and we're happy to help you. In closing, I just want to, again, thank you for your participation. I talked about what a monumental task this is. It truly is enormous, but it's impactful. It's important. Our Navy needs it. Our nation needs it. For all the things that you saw throughout the brief, it is important. We need your help. So thank you again for your participation. We look forward to hearing your feedback or seeing your feedback. And for the QR codes that we showed, I know that we went through those pretty quickly. As I go off screen here, we'll pop those up. We'll have them online there for about 10 minutes as we close the brief down. But you can get pictures of those or screenshots of it as you need. So thank you again for your participation. Thank you for the team for putting this on, and we look forward to your feedback.